Hello and welcome to this video tutorial on the texture brushes filter, now available in 4DFX. Before watching this video, please make sure to watch the introduction video on the brushes in 4DFX, which covers the base workflow and how to use the common parameters. Let's begin by talking about the various use cases for the texture brushes. The texture brushes can be used for both creative and correction purposes. It is indeed possible to do some editing similar to what you can do in a photo editing software. For example, you can remove a logo from a shirt, hide a pimple or a stain, change the color of a region, or insert an image somewhere. Note that, even if it is possible to retouch your sequences with the texture brushes, you should aim during the filming process with the holosys to get the cleanest data possible. That is, by following the filming guidelines and preparing your shoot in advance. If you want to locally change the luminosity of your model, you should use the highlight brushes filter instead. For more information on highlight brushes, please refer to the dedicated video tutorial. Let's now go over the different brushes you can find in this texture brushes filter. First, we have our standard paintbrush. As you can guess, using it, you can locally paint with the color of your choice. To apply, as with any other brush, hold Ctrl to make the brush cursor appear and press left click to actually brush. The opacity of the application is controlled by the strength parameter. So, for example, this is an application with a small strength, and this is an application with a bigger strength. You can change the applied color with the color widget located here. This widget also contains a picking tool that can pick any color present on your screen. For example, in a reference image you have opened on the side. Another option is to use the shift-click shortcut to pick a color on the current mesh. Let's now introduce the brush mode parameter. There are two brush modes, the default being the airbrush mode. Using it, color is added over time until it completely replaces the original color. Let's now switch to the other brush mode, the standard paint mode. Using this one, color is still added over time, but the opacity is limited by a threshold. If I make another pass over this, though, you can see that the colors properly add up. Note that if you want an even application in intensity, you may also want to play with the opacity parameter of the filter. As you can see, it provides an easy control on the overall application. Let's do a short example. Here I want to color this person's hair in this beautiful green. As we want this to be a change in color and not a simple replacement of the texture of the hair with green, I'm going to lower the filter's opacity quite a bit, but use a brush strength of 1. Okay, I went a bit too far in some places when painting, but overall I'm satisfied with this modification. This is a good opportunity to introduce the erase brush, which simply goes back locally to the source texture. Let's use it to fix this without having to redo everything. To quickly use the erase brush without changing your current brush, you can use the shortcut Alt right click. Let's now talk about one more brush that is pretty useful to add new texture details, the stamp brush. This brush allows you to paint with an image file that you can provide. For example, let's replace the old 4D Views logo on this shirt with the new one. I'm going to click on this icon next to the stamp file option and choose a PNG of the logo. Now I'm simply going to press left click once, and here it is. We have our new logo on the mesh. If you want to add several times the same image at a constant 3D size, you should probably turn off the Adapt to Zoom option. The stamp brush can also be used as a paintbrush with a custom brush shape. Let's take this other image for example, which is just a texture. By keeping the mouse button pressed, as with the paintbrush, you can apply this texture as a brush. Note that for this, you will want a PNG file with opacity. For this specific use case, the override color option is quite useful. When turning it on, you are able to select a color, and this color will override the provided image's color. This makes it possible to paint with a custom texture and any color you want. Let's now go over the brushes that are useful for correction. First, we have the clone brush. Similarly to what is common in photo editing software, this allows you to copy a part of the texture and paste it somewhere else. To use this brush, you first have to define a reference point for the texture to be copied. This is done using Shift left click on the point where you wish to set the reference. You can see that a small yellow dot is marking the reference point. Now let's apply your brush on this beauty spot. And now it's gone. You can also duplicate some texture elements if you wish. For example, let's duplicate this shirt button by setting a reference on it. And then let's put another one here. Let's now talk about a similar brush, the heel brush. It works basically in the same way that clone does, but this time it will also adapt the luminosity of the copied texture to the target area. This means you can use it to remove a part of the texture, and it can give an even more seamless result than the clone brush while being easier to use. Let's go back to our previous example. Let's use the clone brush again to fix multiple beauty spots, but we are going to keep a single reference point, which is this one. Okay, we can see that it's not perfect, as some part of the skin are colored differently from our reference point. Now let's do the exact same thing but using the heel brush. As you can see, the heel algorithm adapts the luminosity and the result is seamless without the need to change the reference point each time. Note that this extra quality provided by the heel brush compared to clone may unfortunately be lost when processing. Finally, there is the blur brush, which, as you would expect, blurs the texture locally. This may be useful when using the default paintbrush, or in a similar workflow as a smudge effect to remove some sharpness. Here is a list of shortcuts to quickly access any brush. The pattern is always to press the B key, which stands for brushes, and then the first letter of the brush's name. As in all brush filters, BD also takes you to the filter's default brush, which in this case is the paintbrush. As with the other brush filters, one limitation is that if your model moves a lot, you will see some shift of your application happen. This is going to be a bit more problematic than with the geometric brushes filter, as the texture is significantly more information dense than the geometry. This is particularly visible if you're trying to make some detailed modifications, like, for example, precisely placing a button on a specific part of a shirt. A wider application, like changing the color of someone's hair or covering up a defect, is usually less problematic. When trying to cover up some part of your model's texture using the brushes, one pass may not be enough for a good coverage, as the application may shift. In that case, the recommended workflow would be to keep this first pass and then use more texture brushes filters on the problematic frames. Using those new filters on smaller sections, you should be able to get a clean result. It is also recommended to cover a bit more than just the defect you want to fix by doing wider applications, so that the shift has a lesser impact. In general, instead of doing all your work in a single texture brushes filter, it is recommended to split it up into multiple filters. Make your modifications for a section of your model, then process and see if you are satisfied with the results. If not, you can divide your brush filter into multiple sections and add more brush filters to fix the problems. After that, you can do the rest of what you want to change in a new brush filter. That is all for this video. Detailed explanations on the different brush filters are available in the next videos.